Okay, good. All right, well, your eyes don't look droopy, so that's a good start. I
Good start. It's
know
a
you
very
don't
good
feel
start.
well. So maybe we just start like, how do you and Sayori know each other?
Oh my gosh, I had met you, Saudi. Trying to remember, this is before, maybe I got connected to you when I was researching women board members for my book, Dear Chairwoman, Kana, Saudi. And I think I might have been connected. Do you remember how we
Yeah,
met?
so we met in San Jose. Do you remember Women in Consulting?
Oh, yeah.
That yeah, so through Women in Consulting, yeah, we met each other in San Jose. That was
Gosh,
the first
that
time.
that was a long time ago. That was
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, I can't believe
pre-COVID.
it.
Yeah. So anyway, then I was writing my book about women board members, and Saudi was one of the women that I interviewed to write
Yeah.
my book.
Oh, very
Yep.
cool. Very cool. Good
Gosh,
deal.
when was
Okay.
that? I have to.
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
yeah, and she and I met in San Diego, where I lead these nonprofit walks in the community for between nonprofit leaders and funders, kind of bringing them together and just kind of inspiring locations. And it's very informal. And so she came to a few of those and
Wow.
brought her daughter to a couple,
Yeah.
more than a couple.
What a
My
great
So
daughter
initiative.
also joined that. Yeah,
yeah,
his nonprofit walk is very nice.
Oh, that's
yeah, it's been fun. Been doing that for a few years, and we had one person for the first one, which was me. I was the only one that showed up.
that's
And
great.
now we've had over like 900 or so people over the last few years attending them. So it's just kind of grown organically,
Hmm.
but it's kind of fun. But we're here to talk about you, and here to talk about scaling.
Yeah.
And so what I'm curious about is maybe you can share maybe either current initiative or a previous initiative where there's something you're proud of, where you felt, you know, either you were able to scale it, or maybe you're in the process right now of scaling something. And then I'd love to hear just kind of what was the genesis of that. Why don't we just start with that? Like, well, what's something that
Yeah,
to start
so
with?
let me start with something that perhaps can be part of the recorded back. So I'm Rika Nakazawa, and I am an executive and senior leader within the NTT group company. It's NTT Data. I've returned back to the operating side of the business. I've been at NTT for a few years and very excited to be at a leading technology provider. My entire career has been in the world of technology. And what is not very well known is that I was a big STEM kid in high school myself. I did something called the International Baccalaureate at the international school in Japan, and I did physics and organic chemistry and calculus in high school. And my scores on the International Baccalaureate, this is not me boasting, this is just me underscoring how much of a nerd I was. But my scores in these mathematics and science courses in high school got me a year's worth of credit at Princeton. So when I was going to Princeton University, they told me I could skip a year based on my international baccalaureate scores. So I've always had a STEM mindset. I did not go into the School of Engineering to pursue a degree, and that's for reasons that's not part of this session today. However, I just wanted to mention this because it is definitely part of the DNA by which I'm now pursuing a PhD in quantum and AI. And it's also where my personal interest and passion has been around advancing girls and women in STEM fields, and of course, girls in education and women in their careers and their positions overall. I have been a women in technology, as I mentioned from the very beginning of my career. My first job out of school was in the crazy heydays, very heady days of Internet 1.0. And I had the chance to be part of a Japanese company back then called Sony that is, at the time, it was a group of revolutionaries that were bringing the relevance of internet to their world of film and television. And fast forward, I moved to Silicon Valley, lived in Silicon Valley for almost 18 years, having worked at places like NVIDIA and Capgemini. And it was really through my work there and going to a women alumni conference that Princeton hosted, where I had the chance to meet Meg Whitman. And Meg Whitman is a leading figure in STEM that I wanted to focus on efforts on getting more women and girls into STEM fields and STEM careers. Certainly, as somebody that doesn't have an engineering degree and having been in this world as long as I have been. And that's when I embarked on my own initiative around getting women on boards, because I believe that in order to address a challenge, you go from the bottom up as well as top down. And so I worked on this platform and program called Board Seat Meet, and that became Strides AI. And during the course of that, I wrote a book called Dear Chairwoman that was all about telling the stories of women on boards. And Saudi is one of the people that's featured in the book around that, because part of how we can make an impact and make a difference and get to scale is through storytelling and being able to pave the path and to be able to show the way for us in terms of the difference that you can make in geographies at scale around getting more girls and women into STEM. And certainly through the process, making sure that we can pierce the veil on any kind of myths and misunderstandings of what it takes to have girls and women get into STEM in education or in their careers, and also to be able to perhaps show how the route of the creative path is one of the ways into that. And so that's just a little bit about my background. And within the corporate environment, I think that we have been making some good headway in terms of getting more women in STEM education. I think in the graduate programs in college and graduate programs that there has been some statistics unevenly distributed in different parts of the world where we are able to get more girls into these programs, because part of the challenge is the pipeline. I am an example of somebody that really was able to delve deeply into the technology industry, not by way of engineering. However, it is always very helpful to have that pipeline instrumented through education. So I'm very excited about that and know that a lot of the work that leaders like Saudi Osu and Julie Abrams, who is working on getting more investors to invest in women-founded startups, particularly technology startups, is working on that. And then Ayumi Aokimura, I've been supporting her organization called Women in Tech Global, has been making great strides. Here at NTT, something that I'm personally pretty proud of what our teams have been doing there, especially under the leadership of Jefferson Anselmo, who is our CEO for that region, is something called IT for Girls. And
Okay.
IT for Girls was a program that was started several years ago. And the idea behind IT for Girls was, yes, getting more girls who are graduating and starting their first part of their career in technology, but also for women that maybe had to step out of their careers, not necessarily in technology, but they had to take a break from their careers to go raise a family, to have babies and raise a family, and giving them a roadmap and some guardrails on how they could come back into the workforce after taking that break. And so this program, IT for Girls, was inspired by a group of really progressive and pioneering women that we have within NTT Data in Brazil. And so that IT for Girls program really blossomed. And it was really through the art of storytelling there as well. In particular, there's this one story of a woman, her name is Sayonara, which is a little bit humorous because sayonara in Japanese means goodbye. But it
Right.
was about Sayonara being able to say goodbye, perhaps to her last phase of where she was in her career, and then to get educated and trained in and upskilled in the world of technology, especially because technology has been moving so quickly. And she was inspired to do this through her son, who encouraged her to participate in this program. And so through IT for Girls, she was, as a woman in her 40s, I believe, able to engage and to get trained. And she's now actually one of the trainers and leaders that are now bringing girls and women into the program for AI training and education, because if there's any field in technology and STEM that has been moving very quickly, it's AI. And now at this point, through the IT for Girls program, there have been about 13,000 women who have been impacted and 1,900 scholarships that we've been able to bring forward for technology training, working with partners like Cisco and Dell and Microsoft and others. And we have participants from 22 countries with a goal to reach about 25,000 women who would be trained through the program by 2030. And so I think this is one example of one of the ways that an organization that I've been working with has been able to demonstrate at the industry level, because I know that this program here at South by Southwest in the panel that Saudi has prepared is really across nonprofit, academia, and industry. I believe that a lot of the work that we're doing, and especially with Women's Day this week, in International Women's Day this week, it's really important for us to find ways that we can collaborate within industry with partners that are going to be able to make this change, make this impact at scale.
That's incredible. So I'm curious, I mean, over what period of time, were you able to achieve, this level of scale with affecting, thousands of girls? And what would you say are what would you attribute to your success in being able to grow it to that extent?
Yeah, just to make sure I'm clear that I don't take credit for the program. I did not start it. We at NTT Data, and it really is a collective. We are the ones that have been advancing this. I worked with the team around having the IT for Girls program be a winner for the Women in Tech Global Awards last year. So it was recognized for
Okay.
that, and bringing that forward, and even bringing that forward in the Women in Tech annual summit that we had in Osaka last year during the Osaka Expo. The program has been running for several years. I think that nothing like this necessarily happens overnight. And then once it starts to gain traction, though, it starts to become a snowball effect in a really good way. And it also definitely required our close collaboration with our partners within this ecosystem, because NTT Data, we don't necessarily have technology tools ourselves. We work very closely with our partners, with very strong partnerships with Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, Juniper, and other key players in the technology sector. Now, I think that there is definitely some of these pieces of where AI and some of our partners in the AI ecosystem, whether that's OpenAI, NVIDIA, of course, and then in the Europe, we have a very strong partnership with Mistral AI. How do we bring this forward and for the purposes of future workforce engagement, and certainly in terms of making sure that girls and women find ways and avenues by which they can participate in industry, not necessarily through the classic means of software programming and engineering, which, by the way, that is also something through AI now has uh, been rethought in terms of what is a classical way that you enter the world and workforce of technology and STEM careers outside of
Mm,
that. And then outside of technology, because the other piece here that I think is important to be mindful of is that when we talk about STEM, people tend to focus on the T, on technology. And I think the science piece around the role of medicine and biochemistry and all the other worlds around the science, careers, and opportunities are also in and of themselves being impacted by technology. And the opportunities, I think, are really incredible for the ways that these tools and platforms can be leveraged by girls that are either coming up into the workforce today or with women living longer. And Saudi and I are both, well, I'm half Japanese. Saudi is full Japanese. And Japanese women have, I think, one of the highest lifespans or the longest lifespans or expected life expectancy in the world. And so for me, for example, if I live to the target date of 150, that means I will have many, many opportunities to reinvent and re-educate myself with STEM courses and programs that will be quickly changing as we move into the next decade in the next few years.
that's amazing. I love how you shared, a little bit about, non-traditional ways to get into the field and the industry. And in a way, what I hear you saying is perhaps even redefining what that means, and the like you mentioned, the emphasis on the S part of STEM versus the T part of STEM, or other aspects of it. Um, and that you partnered with others, right? That it was a team effort to do that. Um, did you imagine, and you and your peers imagine at the time, that you would reach this level of scale? Was that something you set out to do in the beginning, or was it a little more organic and local?
It started locally and it was quite organic. And I think when you have that kind of platform, because I know platform is a topic for the session, uh, really being able to have a platform, because again, for there to be an alignment, and when you think about scale, you need to make things accessible, understandable, have a vernacular and a parlance that is commonly shared. And then being able to share those stories. And I do think that a platform like IT for Girls, or a platform like Women in Tech, or a platform like Black Girls Who Code, and a number of other platforms that are out there provides a consistent and relatable way for people to find community. And community is something I believe that, especially when we're going into an era where there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty, and when it comes to questions about how to scale, when organization and businesses and governments and university programs as well are thinking about sovereign capabilities and private AI and all the different ways that we're redrawing some borders in a way that is going to help us cope with some of the challenges that we have ahead. Having a platform that creates that community that sees no borders, that sees no boundaries, and that is able to share a common purpose and a mission and a spirit is one of the ways that you can make that impact. Because ultimately, I think that the idea that these educational platforms, or these not-for-profit platforms, NGO and even industry working together with NGOs, and I should probably augment what I was saying earlier when it comes to partnerships. I was sharing some of the partnerships on the technology company side, but also there's the partnerships that we want to work with in education and not-for-profit as well. We work very closely with universities around some of the innovations that we're driving. In Japan, I know the NTT Docomo folks are working with an NPO called Waffle, and Waffle does something very similar where it's around engaging on the ground with the students on how we can light the way forward and really show the art of the possible. And I think that that excitement and that community, that DNA of the community is what transpires and rises above any kind of
Mm.
geopolitical ethos that may encumber other ways that we can think about scaling these kinds of initiatives and making that impact. Because ultimately, with how much AI is getting embedded into how we work, live, and play, and eventually where science and technology also converge, and what I'm doing my doctorate on is quantum. So quantum computing and quantum sciences, I think that next breakthrough frontier that is going to require these platforms and collaborations to be able to drive the impact forward of how we are driving responsible innovation forward, because we can't do that in a sovereign and private and closed fashion. We have to work across borders and across systems, and that's where platforms can be successful in achieving that.
Yeah. So what's the glue that kind of sets the boundaries for that? If you're spanning across traditional borders and lines, what keeps it going in the intended direction?
I think that the glue is not a monolithic one item. I think it is a combination of leadership. And I think that the leadership, whether that is the voice of the organization that's going to be able to advocate and engage with community and bring other groups within that community, So leadership is absolutely critical to do that, and consistency of that leadership. So not that the same person has to bear the torch forward as leaders change, making sure that 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 score sheet is something that stays consistent through the leaderships. I think second is going to be the storytelling, which ties back to the leadership, is what are the stories and how do you refresh the stories to make them relevant to the people as they hear it so that they can have that earworm consistently, something that is in their head and their mind, to be able to yield that. And then the celebration around the results. So being able to point to the success and the impact, and that impact doesn't necessarily have to be purely metric. So I think that the data is both in part the KPIs that demonstrate numbers and the ways that you can point to the numbers as being emblematic of the impact, but also the quality, right? It's quantity and the quality. So being able to have the
Mm.
leaders that are voicing the stories, and those stories are being representative of the impact, both from a metric perspective as well as qualitative stories that are embedded into the narrative. So I think that the glue is really being able to have that triumvirate of leadership, story, and KPIs or data that is able to support all of that. That then, as Busan is a famous haiku writer, and I'm just thinking about the haiku that he wrote about a candle lighting another candle that then leads to spring twilight. So it's really about being able to connect all of those lights forward that continue to light the path forward for generations to come.
Yeah. Well, in a way, what you've done is kind of set the vision and ignite that sense of imagination that these girls can have a career in the field, or women that are joining the boards, as you mentioned before,
Yeah.
can kind of have that leadership role and that level of influence. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the book Dear Chairwoman, I wrote it I think 5 years ago now. I'm losing track of time. COVID has a habit of twisting our chronological
Right.
memories. But
Right.
even Dear Chairwoman, I still just last week somebody posted on LinkedIn, one of the other women in the book, Andriana, who along with board member in Japan. She's Macedonian, but she was celebrated. Her story in the book was celebrated by a third party in LinkedIn, and that then again brought voices forward and brought people in. So I think the scale is important. Scale is important in terms of overall size impact, but I also think the longevity of the impact starts to play into this as well, and how timeless some of these ways that platforms like a book or stories like the stories of women board leaders and board chairs,
Mm.
and then the leaders being not just the leaders of the older generations, but the younger generations that are then rising up and being able to carry the torch forward, is something that is what yields the inspiration for us to be able to continue having this close collaboration across industry, academia, not-for-profit around a shared purpose and a mission, is ultimately paramount for us to accomplish what we need to accomplish.
Wow, it's amazing. I want to just maybe kind of go back a little bit to the beginning with any entrepreneur, right? Many will have a business plan, and we often know that most business plans, we don't follow them to the T. Something happens along the way, right? And we need to pivot. And so I'm wondering if that was something that you've experienced in some of these initiatives, and what was that pivot you had to make, and um, what was the ultimate outcome?
Um, yeah, I know. So and this part will be cut out from the recording. Saudi Sun said we're running out of time. Um, so the pivot, okay. One of the ventures that I founded was called Board Seat Meet, and we changed to Strides AI. And the original vision of Board Seat Meet, we started it as a not-for-profit, and it was all around helping girls and women network, because there's so much about what you, and this education plays into this, about your skill set and your knowledge. and alongside of that, from a relevance of how you drive impact is about building a network. Your network is your net worth, as somebody much smarter than me once said. And that was really the idea behind Board Seat Meet, was around creating these linkages and making it much easier for women and girls to connect with leaders. And it was not a mentorship platform, it's more of a literally building your network in an authentic and meaningful way. And so we had started on that journey, realizing that we needed to raise capital because we were building a technological platform and we needed funds to build that. So the first pivot was about changing from a not-for-profit to a for-profit, which was an interesting exercise.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
as we built the platform and started to evolve it into something that was going to be useful, one of the other things that we realized was that um, it really needed to have a more of a connective tissue as it relates to having the right data in to be able to meet the sort of prescriptions around who the women or the girl coming into their career needed to connect with on the other side, male or female, somebody that was going to be in industry. And so, and along the way, we started to realize that there was a lot of misunderstandings, not misperceptions around what we were building as a mentorship program, which, as you can imagine, there's a lot of other platforms that have been in existence and at scale much more than ourselves. And so it got to a point where we realized that what we were doing was successful in the sense that we had over 1,000 people on the platform using it, but we realized that we needed to direct those individuals to other platforms that were more robust than an early stage startup like ourselves, even though we got to a point of being able to build out an MVP and raise some funds and some capital. And then along the way, a lot of our messaging was around diversity and inclusion. And as you know, Mike, in the United States, one of the challenges that we ran into was around some of the ways that diversity and inclusion needed to be recalibrated. Not because
Mm.
diversity and inclusion weren't important, they continue to be, but how do we create an environment, an ecosystem where we define diversity not just within the rubric of gender, but how do we also be inclusive for how to consider diversity in other ways and being able to represent other groups? So that was when we decided that we would wind down the platform in the company. We believe the spirit of it is very much still alive, and I'm involved with the groups and the communities that we've developed over that time. But it's really about giving way to and acknowledging how this can be leveraged with other through other avenues with the community that we have built.
Right. So why don't we end with this? Maybe what would you share with with the audience at the conference in terms of advice that you would have for them? If they have their own initiatives, they're trying to, fulfill a vision, identify a platform, you know, identify their own metrics and what's meaningful for them.
Yeah.
What
I
advice would you have?
I I won't say advice because I think all I can really do, because I'm still a humble learner in this whole process, I feel like I haven't really even scratched the surface of the impact that I'd like to make, frankly. But I would say that we're in a remarkable period where agentic AI systems can do a lot of the heavy lift that I think some entrepreneurs may have felt like they had to do themselves. There is a very strong excitement around this idea of solopreneurship. Not that you should do everything on your own, but how might you use these AI platforms and systems, agentic systems, to do a lot of the tasks and things that may have been something that you would want to hire or do yourself or have other people do. So I think that's number one. Number two, so knowing that there's systems and platforms and ones that you can easily go and learn quite quickly how to use them, right? So that and without no code or low code systems. So that's number one. Number two is it's really important for entrepreneurs and those who are embarking on an initiative is that it's a lot of work and being really focused on the mission and being purpose driven is going to be what carries you forward. In addition to if you have, monetary goals, that's important, of course, and certainly to raise capital, being focused on the financial impacts and ways to be able to scale a startup. But I think being really crystal clear on the purpose and the mission and surrounding yourself with the people that share that vision and the mission, not that they have to work for you or with you, but really being able to surround yourself with people that share that energy and that commitment is going to be paramount to deliver things. But I'm excited for this moment in time that we're in because I think learning and the skills and all of that access is more present than ever before. And I think that there's a lot of money in the ecosystem and not just your traditional VC funding. You have private equity that are getting into the game. You have family offices that are very longitudinal in the way that they think about what their ROI is. They may not necessarily be focused on the 10 to 2000x outcome in 7 to 10 years time. They're thinking more generationally and about how to be able to make an impact in ROI that's more than just P&L and pure returns financially. So it's a really exciting time to embark on this. And again, I think that those three pillars that I mentioned earlier about leadership, so being that leader that's going to be able to be really mindful of the stories, and so that again is collecting those stories and collecting the data of the impact that you have and being able to stitch that together to then be able to advocate for the ways that you can show the overall light that is going to be part of the candle that you then light other candles on the journey forward.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Why don't we wrap it up here?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop the recording.